Welcome to Sinister Secrets, where the past refuses to rest. Tonight we step into the shadows of one of Australia's most notorious prisons, the Old Melbourne Gaol. A place where echoes of the condemned still whisper through its cold stone halls, where the restless souls of prisoners, murderers and lost spirits roam reliving their tragic ends. But this isn't just any prison, it's a place where death was inevitable, where justice blurred with vengeance, and where the gallows claimed over 130 lives. If walls could speak, they'd tell tales of agony, injustice and spirits trapped between this world and the next. Stay with me as we explore the grim history, chilling ghost stories, and the unexplainable horrors of the Old Melbourne Gaol, Australia's most haunted prison. The Old Melbourne Gaol was built in 1841, a towering stone prison that loomed over the city like a monument to suffering. Situated in the heart of Victoria, it was designed not just to confine criminals, but to break them. Its thick bluestone walls and iron-barred cells were meant to house the most dangerous individuals, thieves, outlaws and murderers, those who society had deemed beyond redemption. Yet over time, the jail became infamous for something far more sinister, its relentless cycle of executions. This was a place where justice was swift and merciless. Over 130 men and women met their end on the prison gallows, their fates sealed by the heavy wooden beam that still casts a long shadow over the prison today. The executions here were not just punishments, they were spectacles. The condemned would take their final steps toward the noose, their last words swallowed by the eerie silence of the prison yard. Some went quietly, resigned to their fate. Others fought, their desperate struggles only adding to the horror of the moment. The rope would snap tight, and the crowd would watch as yet another life was extinguished within these walls. Among the many who met their end here, one name echoes through history: Ned Kelly. Australia's most legendary outlaw, a man both feared and idolised. To some, he was a rebellious folk hero, standing against a corrupt system. To others, he was nothing more than a cold-blooded killer. Either way, his final moments inside Old Melbourne Gaol are unforgettable. On the morning of November 11th, 1880, Kelly was led to the gallows, his chains clinking against the stone floor. As the executioner placed the noose around his neck, he uttered his now iconic last words: "Such is life." Moments later, the trapdoor beneath his feet swung open and one of the most infamous criminals in Australian history met his end. But Kelly was not alone in his fate. Many before him had walked the same path, their names forgotten, but their suffering imprinted on the prison walls. Frederick Bailey Deeming, a brutal murderer and possible Jack the Ripper suspect, was executed here in 1892. Elizabeth Scott, the first woman to be hanged in Victoria, was condemned for a crime many believed she never truly committed. Each execution carried its own story, stories of desperation, injustice and betrayal. Yet the horrors of Old Melbourne Gaol did not end at the gallows. For those who escaped execution, life within the prison was its own kind of torment. The cells were small, suffocating and devoid of light. The air thick with the stench of sweat, decay and despair. Food was scarce and prisoners were often left to rot in their cells, ravaged by disease, malnutrition and insanity. Isolation was a form of punishment, but for many it became a slow march toward death. Some prisoners took their own lives, unable to endure the torment, while others simply wasted away, forgotten by the world outside. Even the guards and executioners were not immune to the darkness that shrouded the prison. Some reported hearing disembodied whispers in the dead of night, footsteps in empty corridors, and an oppressive sense of dread that clung to the air long after an execution had taken place. When the prison finally closed its doors in 1929, it was abandoned, but not emptied. The suffering, the injustice, and the restless spirits of the condemned refused to leave. The walls, once soaked in the cries of the dying, remained haunted by their echoes. Today, the prison stands as a ghostly reminder of its dark past, a place where the dead still walk among the living. And maybe that's why, even now, long after the gallows have fallen silent, the spirits of the condemned still whisper through the halls, unwilling to rest. Many claim the spirits of the executed still walk the corridors of this prison. Paranormal investigators, visitors, and even staff have reported shadows, eerie whispers, and sudden touches from unseen hands. Let's dive into some of the most terrifying ghostly encounters reported at Melbourne Gaol. Of all the haunted corners of Old Melbourne Gaol, Cell 17 carries perhaps the darkest presence. It's a place where the air feels heavier, where shadows seem to stretch unnaturally, and where even the bravest visitors hesitate before stepping inside. Those who dare enter often describe an overwhelming sense of dread, an unshakable feeling that something unseen is watching them, waiting, lurking just beyond their vision. Many report an unnerving pressure against their chests, as if the air itself is thick with an invisible force. Some claim they've felt cold fingers graze their shoulders, an icy touch that sends shivers down their spine, while others speak of a bone-chilling coldness that seeps into their very core, draining the warmth from their bodies. The cell, though physically empty, always feels occupied. But who, or what, haunts Cell 17? Many believe it is the spirit of Frederick Bailey Deeming, one of the most notorious murderers to be executed within these walls. A man of monstrous cruelty, Deeming was convicted for murdering his wife and children, but some speculate his crimes went much deeper. In fact, some researchers claim he was a prime suspect in the Jack the Ripper killings, his movements aligning suspiciously with the infamous Whitechapel murders in London. If true, it would mean that Old Melbourne Gaol became the final resting place of one of history's most elusive serial killers. Perhaps that is why his presence lingers so strongly in this cell. Guards and visitors alike have described a suffocating atmosphere inside Cell 17, as if an unseen force is pressing down upon them. Many report hearing raspy, laboured breathing echoing through the silence, an eerie, guttural sound that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Some claim that, when standing in complete darkness, a shadow moves in the corner, pacing, shifting, lurking just out of reach. Paranormal investigators have attempted to capture evidence of this ghostly entity, with many reporting sudden battery drains, EVP recordings of faint whispers, and strange fluctuations on thermal cameras. One investigator even swore he felt an invisible force grab his arm, pulling him back toward the darkness of the cell as he tried to leave. Could it be Deeming's restless soul, forever tormented by the weight of his crimes? Or is it something even darker, a manifestation of pure evil, feeding on the fear that Cell 17 has cultivated over the years? One thing is certain, those who enter rarely leave unchanged. When the prison falls silent and the last footsteps of the living fade into the night, a different sound takes over, a sound that has left visitors frozen in terror. It begins as a distant, sorrowful wail, drifting through the empty corridors like a mournful lament. As it draws closer, the cries become sharper, more desperate, a raw and agonized sobbing that echoes off the cold stone walls. Many believe this is the restless spirit of Elizabeth Scott, the first woman to be hanged in Victoria. Her trial was swift, her sentence even swifter. Accused of murder, she was led to the gallows in 1863. But many believe she was innocent, a victim of circumstance condemned by a system that was quick to punish and slow to question. If that is true, then her cries in the night are not just those of suffering, but of betrayal, injustice, and a soul that refuses to rest. Visitors walking past the cell blocks after dark have reported hearing her weeping nearby, only to turn and find nothing but shadows. Some say they have felt an icy breath against their ear, accompanied by a faint, sorrowful whisper pleading for help. Others claim to have heard her voice in the dead of night, murmuring words they cannot fully understand, as if she is still trying to tell her side of the story, still begging to be heard. It is said that in the execution yard near the spot where she met her fate, an overwhelming sense of sadness lingers. Some have even seen a faint, ghostly figure standing in the dim light, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. When approached, she vanishes, but the sound of her sorrow remains, carrying through the darkness, a haunting reminder of a woman whose story was never finished. The gallows stand as a grim reminder of Old Melbourne Gaol's darkest purpose. Beneath the heavy execution beam, over 130 prisoners took their final breath, their bodies left dangling as the prison carried out its brutal sense of justice. Though the hanging ceased long ago, the energy of death remains, thick in the air, impossible to ignore. Those who dare to step beneath the beam often describe an overwhelming sensation, as if the very walls are closing in around them. The air feels heavier, pressing down on their chests with an unseen force. Some describe it as a suffocating presence, an invisible noose tightening slowly around their throat, making it impossible to breathe. Others say they feel a strange dizziness, as if something is pulling them downward, mimicking the sensation of the trapdoor giving way beneath their feet. But the most chilling encounters come from tour guides and visitors alike, who have witnessed sudden, unexplained gasping fits. Guests standing beneath the gallows have been seen clutching at their throats, eyes wide with terror, struggling for air as if some unseen force is strangling them. Some stumble backward in panic, certain that cold spectral hands have just wrapped around their necks. The fear in their eyes is real, and so perhaps is whatever haunts this space. Could it be the spirits of the executed, forced to relive their final moments over and over? Are they desperate to share their pain, their suffering seeping into those who stand where they once died? Or is it something even darker, something unseen, something feeding on the fear left behind? One thing is certain, those who stand beneath the gallows often leave with a lingering sense of dread, as if the eyes of the condemned are still watching, waiting, and whispering from beyond the grave. Of all the spirits said to haunt Old Melbourne Gaol, none loom larger than that of Ned Kelly, Australia's most infamous outlaw. His name is legend, a folk hero to some, a cold-blooded killer to others, but even in death, he remains a figure of mystery, defiance, and lingering unrest. Many believe that Kelly's spirit never truly left the prison. Visitors walking through the cell blocks have reported a faint whisper drifting through the silence, a low, raspy voice murmuring words they cannot fully understand. Some claim to hear their own names spoken in the dark, while others swear they have caught a fleeting shadow moving just out of sight, a restless presence that refuses to fade. But it is near the gallows, the very place where Kelly met his fate in 1880, that his presence feels strongest. A sudden drop in temperature, an unnatural chill that seems to cut through the warmest nights, has been felt by those who stand near the execution site. Some describe a sensation of being watched, an unshakable feeling that something, or someone, is lurking just behind them. And then there is his death mask, and after Kelly's execution his face was plastered and preserved, a macabre tradition at the time. His lifeless expression, frozen in time, is now on display within the prison, but those who dare to look too closely often regret it. Some say staring into Kelly's hollow eyes brings on a sense of unease, a feeling of being pulled into something beyond their understanding. Others have reported nausea, dizziness, and even hallucinations, as if the mask is more than just a relic. It is a gateway to something lingering, something that refuses to be forgotten. The most unsettling accounts come from those who claim the mask moves, not physically, but in a way that makes it seem alive. Its gaze shifts, follows, watches. No matter where they stand, they feel its eyes locked onto them, as if Kelly himself is still here, observing, waiting, for what no one knows. For decades, Old Melbourne Gaol has been a hotspot for paranormal investigations, drawing ghost hunters, researchers, and skeptics from all over the world. Countless reports, eerie encounters, and unexplained events have only strengthened its reputation as one of Australia's most haunted locations. The prison's grim history, its lingering energy of suffering and death, and the sheer number of executions that took place here seem to have left an imprint on reality itself, one that refuses to fade. Paranormal teams equipped with infrared cameras, thermal scanners, and EVP recorders have captured unexplainable activity time and time again. Shadowy figures have been seen moving through the hallways even when no one is there. These figures are often described as tall, dark silhouettes, sometimes appearing near the cells, the execution yard, or the gallows, only to vanish when approached. Strange lights and glowing orbs have been caught on film, drifting through the empty, lifeless cells. Some claim these are the manifestations of spirits, others suggest they are residual energy, lingering impressions of those who once suffered within these walls. Unexplained temperature drops send shivers down visitors' spines, even in the height of summer. A room may be warm one moment, then freezing cold the next, often accompanied by a sudden oppressive feeling of dread. Objects have moved on their own. Doors slam shut violently without explanation. Cell doors rattle as if someone or something inside is trying to break free. A dark figure was once caught on camera pacing near the gallows, only to vanish into thin air. Paranormal investigators later reviewed the footage and confirmed no one had been in that area at the time. Even the most hardened skeptics have left this prison with a different perspective, admitting that something is not right about this place. Some who scoffed at the idea of ghosts before entering have left with pale faces, shaking hands, and stories they refuse to share. The Old Melbourne Gaol remains one of Australia's most terrifying locations, its haunted history woven into the very fabric of its stone walls. Though the prison ceased operations long ago, its dark presence never left. Ghost tours continue to take brave souls deep into its corridors, inviting them to walk among the dead, to stand in the very spot where men and women took their final breaths. But be warned, many who enter leave feeling was different. Some claim that the spirits follow them home, their presence lingering in the corners of their rooms, watching from the darkness. Others report strange dreams, unexplainable nightmares, and waking in the night with a suffocating sense of being watched. A few have even claimed that in the days following their visit, they've seen shadowy figures in their homes, whispering voices calling their names in the silence. So tell me, would you dare step inside the Old Melbourne Gaol knowing that those who enter often leave with a weight they can't explain? Would you stand beneath the execution beam, feeling the icy grip of the past tighten around you? Would you walk the abandoned corridors, listening for the whispers of the condemned, knowing that something unseen may be walking right beside you? Or would you rather leave the dead in peace, knowing that some places hold secrets too dark to disturb? Because once you step inside, the prison remembers you. And some say, it never truly lets you go. Thank you for watching Sinister Secrets. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of Australia's most haunted prisons, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a paranormal experience? Have you visited a haunted place and left feeling different? Share your stories in the comments below. Who knows? Your experience might just be featured in a future episode. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.